Good evening.
Hey, Jonathan. How you doing?
Pretty good, are you?
All right.
Good evening.
I think they got it where everybody can open the videos up now.
All right. I'm getting this video going here. Hey, Daryl. Hey, Donovan.
Hey, Curtis, how are you today?
All right, and you?
Doing well. Trying to stay warm. Hi, Don.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, guys.
How you doing?
What's up, Coop?
All right.
Hey, guys.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello, Christine.
Hi there. Hey, little disclaimer. I had some dental work done, so if I sound funny, I'm sorry, I'm still numb.
Okay.
Okay.
I told her she would have to read everything,
Yeah,
There you
thanks.
even my side.
You want us to let you know if you have some drool coming down your chin?
Yes, that would be very kind. Thank you. I've got a napkin ready.
And I think you've just described her worst fear as she described it earlier.
Absolutely. It's been a long dental journey, let's just say that. I wish I had stock in that business. Mr. Brown, I just checked again and I have not received any public participation.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Has Mr. Homan joined us yet?
I don't see him yet.
Okay.
coming in pretty well there, Jonathan.
Thank you.
That's going to serve you pretty well over this next couple of days.
Definitely keeps your face warmer.
I can't do, this is what I got. Can't go full beard.
I got to keep it trimmed up with having the mask on. It drives you nuts.
I'm sure. Mr. Brooks, you look like you survived your busy weekend.
We did. We actually made it happen. So now I'm back, catching up on the backlog.
Hi, Mr. Homan.
How we doing?
Doing well.
We're good.
I think we're in good shape, Mr. Brown.
Okay, looks like we have everybody. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Brooks,
Here.
Mr. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Homan,
Here.
Mr. Stahl.
Here.
Everyone, please join Mr. Brooks as he leads us in a period of meditation and in the pledge.
Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone have a copy of the agenda for this meeting in front of them. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I thought we were
Make the
getting rid of
motion.
that.
I'm sorry.
I thought we were getting rid of motions to adopt agendas.
It's on this one, so I thought we were too, but I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking about the organization meeting.
So, all right, I'll take that motion for Mr. Homan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Stahl? I had a question regarding the attachment B. There's some blanks in there. Has that information been presented to us?
I'm not aware of any blanks. We originally had a copy, and then we replaced it with an original copy.
Okay.
The blanks that I do know of is an appendix or a resolution number that will be sent out by the city.
Okay,
You're talking about the CRA agreement. All of the materials have been updated, Mr. Brown.
okay, all right. I just want to make certain that we have that.
Yes.
So, and no changes. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
and Mr. Brown.
Yes. All right. Everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from the previous two meetings that were held on January the 12th. We had the organizational meeting first, then we followed it with the regular meeting. Any questions or comments regarding those two minutes as presented? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt those minutes as presented?
So moved.
Moved.
Mr. Cooper, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Homan? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Okay. All right, you indicated there was no one who asked for public participation right tonight?
That's correct.
Okay. Did Mr. Boyd have any comments for us?
No, sir, not this evening.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to item 7, Treasurer's Report. Ms. Blend?
Okay, just a couple of things for you. As we previously mentioned, the CRA agreement, a resolution is on the agenda this evening for your consideration. And if we approve that agreement, it will next go on to the city and city council for their approval. We're happy to see this agreement put together. Dr. Kramer, Mr. Homan, and I worked with David Kell of the Chamber and with the city leadership as well to put this together. It's a great thing for the City of London. It'll be a 3-part construction project. We'll bring some new jobs into the area, some additional revenue, namely for the city, and then perhaps some school district income tax, depending on where the residents live and if they live in London. So we're happy to see that. I mentioned in my notes, I wanted to point out, we're happy to see that we've got some additional state revenue for this year. It came last minute. If you recall, when the pandemic first started, the state and ODE cut our funding. And so part of that has been restored, and that will happen immediately and be for this year. And then the governor's budget plans to restore our funding to pre-pandemic levels, which would be FY19 levels. So basically, we would be back up to where we were for 22 and 23. The governor's also proposed, although this is just his proposal at this point, some additional school wellness and success funds. And if you recall, we received those in 20 and 21. So we're anticipated to receive those funds in 22 and 23. So that would be great. We also received notice that there was some additional CARES Act funding. They're actually called ESSER funds, which is emergency relief funding for schools. So if that follows through, and I believe that it will, we're slated to receive $1.2 million sometime shortly. So that's certainly all good news. Those funds are supposed to be targeted toward learning loss of students. So we certainly already have some ideas about how we can spend those funds, and we'll have some upcoming meetings regarding that funding. That's it.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to routine items 7.1 through 7.8. Motion to consider those.
Motion.
Mr. Stahl, second by Mr. Homan. Discussion?
I just wanted to point out a few things on the variance report. You know, as been our norm lately, thankfully, there's not a lot to report. Our revenue is slightly ahead. We received some additional casino revenue funding. We receive those funds twice a year. And when the shutdown occurred, we did back the estimates for that funding off, not knowing what would happen with the economy. So those came in a little higher than I had projected. So that's good news. And on the budget end, we are still trending under in several areas: purchase services, supplies and materials, which are two of our very large budget areas. Other objects is a very small miscellaneous line that is trending under as well. So our ending cash balance right now at this point is estimated to be about $583,000 above our last 5-year forecast. And I will point out now in my notes, I erroneously gave you the figure for our cash balance. I had 433,000, my mistake. I apologize. That should be 583,000. If we do come back in, which we're very hopeful, as soon as the guidelines from Madison County Public Health are revised, I expect those line items to tick up a little bit, and we won't probably remain as far under budget as we are right now. But all in all, really good news. We're really on track, faring better than our estimates. So that's good news. And I will be happy to take any questions on any of the reports anybody has.
Any questions or comments on routine items 7.1 through 7.8?
The other thing I want to point out before we vote is I do want to point out something that Chris had in her notes regarding the City of London income tax sharing payment.
Yes.
This is pretty big for those of you that aren't in the numbers. It's when you got changeover with treasurers or treasurers that don't dig into it, stuff like this is very easy to miss. And when we were fortunate enough to get Chris back, she dove right in, and it wasn't clean and it wasn't a lot of fun, but it did result in $290,000 worth of money that was due us. And that's huge. So I just kind of want to give some props out to Chris. Thanks for your hard work on getting that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you. Any other questions or comments on 7.1 through 7.8? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
All right, moving on, section B, I have a motion to consider business items 7.9 through 7.12.
So moved.
Mr. Brooks, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cooper, discussion?
Just a few things here to note. We had a couple of then and now purchase orders. Those things sometimes happen and things fall through the crack. Really working with staff to try and get a little more organized and be proactive. Certainly these are not unexpected expenditures, but the proper paperwork just wasn't done in a timely manner. So I'm working with them on that. I'm happy to say that we've had a lot of support for the Raider Rack and many London programs. And you can see here, we had some very generous donations to the Raider Rack, which will definitely be put to good use. So happy to see that. And we thank those individuals. And then there's a motion here to approve the 2020 tax year rates and amounts from the county auditor. This happened a little later than normal. Generally, you would have seen this in January, but the county auditors, and in fact, most of the counties in Ohio were delayed a little bit by the Ohio Department of Taxation. So nothing on their fault. It's definitely a routine item. And then, of course, the CRA agreement and resolution to approve is the last item there for you.
Any questions or comments on 7.9 through 7.12? I'd like to thank the folks represented in 7.10 for the indeed generous donations to the Raider Rack and the continued excellent community support that we receive as a school district. I'd also like to thank those of you who have worked diligently on the CRA. I know a lot of time and effort in to getting that, and it's great to see the growth here within our community, and it's also imperative that we look to the impact it'll have on the school district as well. So thank you all for working to that common ground and getting there. So there are no other questions or comments on 7.9 through 7.12. We'll proceed to roll call, please.
Certainly. Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. You provided actually a pretty good segue into a conversation that you and I had and a request that you had for our next board meeting. And that is to have Mrs. Canny here who would highlight some of the things that we're doing from a community perspective. So in March, traditionally, our Raider Scope focuses on the work that our students do and some of our programs that focus on our school district community. That looks a little bit different this year. Some of the service projects that we would normally take part in obviously had to either be canceled or curtailed. However, as we noted with the Raider Rack, there is a great partnership between the community and the school district. And you had asked for Mrs. Canny and for perhaps us to highlight that at the next meeting. I'd be happy to do that. So just bringing that to everyone's attention as something to look forward to for next month. A couple other updates for the board. First, focusing on operations. As I've been prone to do each week for all of you, our dashboard in regards to COVID looks particularly well. And in fact, as I highlighted in my open letter to families last week, should this have been in October, we would be all in with all students every day on campus. Our guideline, well, our requirements are different right now. We're hoping that on March 1st, as I've shared with the community and shared with the board, that those will be revised and relaxed so that we can bring all students back on campus. I'm thrilled that we're able to do that with our elementary students. We're able to meet that because our classrooms are that 900 square feet that the Ohio Schools Facilities Commission requires for those buildings, a little bit different than the requirements in the middle school and the high school, which are traditionally a little bit smaller. So I'm anxious to have our kids back on campus, our elementary students back on campus on Tuesday, and then to look in the very near future to having everybody back as soon as we possibly can. Our positive trends were echoed in a conference call that the county superintendents had with Health Director Cook earlier this week. He noted during that conference call that both the positivity rate and the number of cases in the county, and we also see this reflected in the state, continue to go down. We know that as we've communicated our vaccination date, we were tiered for the 4th group out of 4, because that seems to be how a little bit how this has gone. But staff are slated to receive the first round of vaccinations on Wednesday, February 24th. So that date is quickly approaching. So we are certainly looking forward to that. Also, I wanted to highlight the district put out a request for proposal last week for food service operations. This is an effort on our behalf in order to gather some financial information. As I've noted, information that's posted on our website and also shared with the board, the district really in FY19 began to exhaust all of its reserves in that account. And just to highlight, last year, we had to transfer from general fund $150,000. So we want to explore every avenue that we can from a cost saving standpoint. This is one. Those of you who have been on the board for a couple of years, we did something very similar in regards to maintenance and custodial about 4 or 5 years ago and explored that option, opted not to do that. Just a reminder, process-wise, this would need to be negotiated with our local OPSI association should we want to move forward to that. And the final thing that I'll tell you is in publishing our RFP and in attempting to try to get as many bidders as possible, we're realizing that we've created a very tight timeline. And so I would like to extend that timeline. The due date is February 19th. I would like to extend that into beginning of April so that we can receive as many proposals as we possibly can, make a better, well-informed decision. So you'll see some advertisements that we're extending that deadline coming out tomorrow. Certainly wanted to update the board prior to us doing that. And finally, Christina and I have spoken about this, and I think it would behoove us if we would schedule, for a number of reasons, a Facilities and Finance Committee meeting here in the very soon future. One of the things that we talked about, the district has applied for and has been granted trademarks. And I think we need to have some discussions in that committee and then present to the board a plan for working through those trademarks, how we would work, say, for example, with entities that would want to use the image and likeness of the school district for profit. And there are other things that go on with that as well. Sponsorships, for example, from say a Pepsi or a Coke, or facility usage, those types of other aspects of bringing revenue into the district. I'd really like to see us with more of a cohesive plan. So if we can work through that committee and then present back to the entire board, I think that would really be beneficial. And I'm happy to answer any questions, whether it be operationally, whether it be about food service, or whether it be about looking at trademark branding.
Any questions? I'll just thank you for working again to be good stewards of the district's money and put RFP. I think it's important that we examine these and as you said, we did it a couple of years ago and made a decision based upon the information that was presented, and that's what we need to continue to do is look to make certain that we're again being good stewards of the district funds. So thank you for doing that, and I think it's a great idea to extend the deadline and have as the most competition as we can in the process to give the best that we can for the district.
And I'm appreciative with Christine. While I've worked on the RFP a lot, she's consulted on a lot. She's really taking the lead role in putting out publishing that RFP and facilitating questions and things like that. So really reaching out to vendors so that they're aware and so that we can get a number of bids so that we can have the most information possible. So thank you, Christy.
Thank you. All right, the first item up under policy and governance is the first reading of the academic calendar for 21-22. That's Appendix C. Are there any questions or comments on the academic calendar for its first reading?
Just a couple of quick highlights, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Put out some information to our staff to provide some feedback. We'll do the same with some of our partner schools like Toles and St. Patrick's after this first reading as well. What you see reflected in the first draft is really kind of a compromise, as you might expect. There are varying opinions, and they seem to not be exactly 50-50, but certainly people have opinions about starting early or ending early, or starting later and ending later, and some of those things. So what we try to represent in the academic calendar is perhaps a compromise of that. One of the other aspects that we looked at was balancing a first semester with a second semester. Our second semester was generally particularly longer than our first semester. And from an academic standpoint, really tried to even that out as much as possible. The last thing that I'll suggest is we also talked about that the calendar might be one for us to issues might come up during negotiations. So while this is the first draft of the calendar, this could be something that we look back for a revision in the future.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on the academic calendar as presented? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to policy and governance 8.2 through 8.3. Do you have a motion to consider and approve those as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Brooks, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Cooper, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. These are being presented without changes from the first reading from last month. I will highlight that we have expanded our on-site college and credit plus offerings up to 11 now. And that's a good partnership with really recruiting some teachers and some teachers taking some initiative and really looking at some wanting to teach those courses and have those opportunities expanded for students. And one thing that I'm particularly proud of, and it's been something that we've been working on, we have a track for students to complete the transfer module now. Most of those courses could be taken on-site with just a couple of courses being supplemented either online or actually on campus. The Ohio transfer module is essentially transfers all of your general education courses to another state school within Ohio. So it's a particularly large cost savings for our students potentially if they were to complete that. So we're particularly proud that we were able to track that out. As you know, we've taken a particular look at college and career track and pathways. And this is just evidence of perhaps some of the efforts that we're taking now that we're seeing that a little bit more into fruition.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the course guide for both the high school and the middle school? Okay, seeing none, move on to roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to business item recommendations 8.4 through 8.7. Do I have a motion to consider and approve those?
Make a motion.
Mr. Stahl, do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. Brooks? Discussion?
Thank you, everyone. Just going down very quickly, 8.4 is a recommendation for early graduation. I'm very pleased actually to present this to you. This is an important for this student and for this student's family for this to be approved. They have met all the criteria for graduation and they would be invited to participate in graduation at the end of the year, but it's important for them for this resolution to be passed this evening. 8.5 is an annual recommendation for our partnership with PlugSmart. PlugSmart is our vendor that really assists the district with our HVAC controls, a relationship that we work with probably daily or every couple of days to ensure that the HVAC control in each of the buildings across our campuses are working the most efficiently. This contract has been reduced in past years. So if you saw some language within the contract, I know Mr. Brown asked me about a couple of strike-throughs. That just reflects some of the reduction, and the overall cost is the same as last year, but that was reduced from the year prior. 8.6 is a perfunctory recommendation for the Library Board of Trustees. We've done this before. I think everyone on the board is familiar with the district's role in that one. And 8.7 is a recommendation to approve a change in date for the district's graduation. I'm happy to present this to you. Simply what we want to do is move graduation from Sunday afternoon until Friday evening in anticipation of holding an on-site outdoor graduation. And so I wouldn't be recommending this to you unless I've had some pretty promising conversations with the health department in anticipation. We need to have this right now so that students, for example, on their graduation announcements can get the right date out. Friday evening does allow us Saturday and Sunday as rain dates. Traditionally, if a district would have an outdoor graduation, they might keep it on the same date but move inside. That's probably not going to be in the cards for us. But again, we're planning full force to have it on site and be outside and to retain our new tradition of having the graduation parade. In talking with the senior class advisors and our senior class officers, our student officers, the parade was brought up on a number of occasions. So we are absolutely going to retain that new tradition as well.
And you've also received insight from the senior class on moving the date as well, and they're in favor of that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Browning has met with the senior class officers.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions on business item recommendations 8.4 through 8.7? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes. Okay, moving on to personnel recommendations. We have a motion to consider personnel recommendations 8.8 through 8.13.
So moved.
Mr. Cooper, do I have a second?
Second, Mark.
Mr. Homan? Okay, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. This recommendation is emblematic of one classified recommendation to hire and one classified resignation. Mr. Homan asked, just inquired about the number of middle school track supplementals. And I appreciated his question, did some tracking. The number of supplementals that you see there are the same number of supplementals that has appeared on past agendas. So lots of events in track, typically hired two coaches per, for the boys, 2 coaches for the girls as well, with the number of events that we have there.
All right, any questions or comments on personnel recommendations 8.8 through 8.13? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to board representation and liaison reports. There's been no BAC meetings since our last meeting. Moving to facility and finance.
Nothing to report.
I'll send out a few dates for the Facilities and Finance Committee to see what might work with all members. And as I mentioned, we would then be able to report back to the board on a couple of different ideas.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the London Foundation board meeting. We did have a meeting. There were some questions. We had a meeting on the 1st of February. Final decision has yet to be. Another scheduled meeting for 0800 on 1 March. So we look forward to having that meeting and getting a final number. So again, we're very thankful to have the support of the London Foundation. We're lucky as a community to have that organization and to have that those monies available to benefit our students. So looking forward to that meeting and bringing back a nice round number for everyone to hear. Right, moving on to School Safety Committee.
We haven't had a meeting, but Mr. Cooper will need to meet. It's that time of year to review some of our annual safety plans. And I will say the storefront in the high school, while we didn't have school today, there was some construction in the storefront of the high school today.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Cooper. That's it.
Nothing to report on that one.
Report. I forwarded a couple of emails to you all on that, but nothing else to bring your attention. Tax Abatement Committee.
We got an upcoming meeting here soon where we'll go over all these wonderful CRAs and approve them, I'm sure. So we'll let you know if anything comes out of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Homan. We appreciate your number crunching abilities.
Thank you.
So, Tolles, Board of Education.
No,
Brooks.
here, we had our organizational regular meeting in January. We do have new members that were sworn in from Fairbanks and Jonathan Alder. And Doug Maggie is the representative from Hilliard. He is the president for this upcoming year, for this current year. And Mark Mason from Madison Plains is the vice president. And our next regular meeting will be held February 18th.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I'm not aware of any requirement for an executive session. Is anyone else in need of an executive session? Okay. All right. Hearing none, do I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Homan, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Stahl, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all. Have a good night and stay safe.